Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
Hey friends, I am Neethi the Pharmacist, here with my co-hosts Janae Williams and Valerie Cruz, and we are on full. Welcome to Our View.
Hi everyone.
Hey everybody.
Hey everyone. Well, today we have with us Tami Purdue, who's the owner of Sweet Peas Urban Gardens, which she started on her own residential property and which is true to the name Urban Garden, as this farm is located only 2 miles from downtown Raleigh. Her team grows over 55 varieties of microgreens and vegetable shoots, exemplifying the precepts of the urban garden movement. We are so happy to have you with us, Tami, today. Thank you for joining us.
Yay.
So, yay!
Thank you
for
having
coming
me.
back on.
Thank you.
So, Tami, if you guys have been following the Neethi the Pharmacist podcast, then you know that we've had several conversations. So, this next season, we're really excited to have you on camera with us, Tami. And we've had many conversations, including, talking about the human rights violations that are happening in regards to raising produce and other things. But I think that just as a quick recap, why don't we talk about what actually is an urban garden?
Okay. So in 2050, the World Health Organization is predicting we're going to run out of food because we have totally monocultured the inside of this country, all the farmland. We have been using pesticides and herbicides to a degree that's unhealthy for growing food, and people are migrating to urban environments, to the cities. So what we need to do, what people have been talking about, is growing food inside the city, and when you do that, you have to do it in interesting ways. So in my case, we grow in a shipping container. But usually in an urban environment, you're challenged with, a warehouse, abandoned property, all of the things that happen inside of cities, but have the potential to grow food. So really, this is what the movement of urban farming is moving some of the rural farming, growing food inside the city limits.
And that's interesting to me because we talk a lot about the browning of the earth here and how many problems the earth is having and all the labels people have applied to that. And one solution in our regenerative movement is go locally to the farmers on land and farms. But we're providing yet another solution through you where it doesn't even have to be a large plot of land. It could be right there in your house or in a shipping container as you chose, or anywhere.
For sure. So my particular produce is just ideal for urban farming because it's micro and I can have a little micro farm. So for me, it works out. It's just a beautiful a marriage of those two ideas. So,
So when you say micro farming, what is that?
So, just that we grow microgreens in a very teeny tiny space, a 10 by 40 foot shipping container. We can grow 20 tons of produce a year in that shipping container. So, that's what micro farming is.
It's basically having a lot of food, which is smaller in size, in a smaller in size environment.
Yes.
So there are a lot of folks that argue that you can get that much nutrition, like 1 tablespoon of microgreens is equivalent to an entire serving of vegetables. And in the sense of the quantity of nutrition, I'm not saying that you're going to get as full as you would if you ate an entire serving of vegetables. I'm saying you're going to get as much of the vitamins and the minerals
Correct.
and things of that nature within 1 tablespoon. So a lot of folks have a hard time wrapping their mind around the power of the incredible seed. So can you
So
maybe elaborate on that?
when I started growing microgreens, I learned how to grow microgreens from an urban farm pioneer, somebody who was very invested in teaching folks who could have problems with food insecurity, joblessness, homelessness inside of a city to empower themselves. And the name of the organization is Growing Power. And what he ended up explaining to us was that in urban areas, you can start a community garden in a building or in an abandoned lot. And then you might find that since you're in the urban area where lots of restaurants are, that you could support the little endeavor by growing microgreens, because microgreens were considered by chefs to be, a premium. And so we were able to start any kind of endeavor using microgreens to. So back to the nutrition. Finding out after I had started to grow them for that reason, I thought, I'm sitting in Southeast Raleigh. There's a lot of folks who have food insecurity. And I thought, well, maybe there's a way I can hire somebody to come help me on my farm who's from my neighborhood, and we can grow this. And so that's what I was thinking. And so I was doing all kinds of research. And I found that there was a study going on at the University of Maryland where a scientist was trying to look at the nutrients in a microgreen and compare it to the full-grown vegetable. And she was astounded. She had no idea that she was going to find that they were 4 to 40 times more nutrient dense. So
that's why we teach that these are living foods that you should use for your supplements instead of powders, pills, things of that nature. So, I'm always trying to explain to everybody, look, I'm not saying you're going to get fuller off of these microgreens with 1 tablespoon. That's not what I'm ever saying. But rather than take a handful of supplements, you could take a couple handfuls of microgreens, and you cannot know. Actually, you can know. If you really think about it, if you are continuously putting in whatever you can find that has that life-giving force in its most initial stage, then you're going to be consuming and producing extra youth. You're injecting yourself with some youth. So, consider it, like drinking literally out of the fountain of youth. If you're eating these young seeds that have just sprouted with life-giving force, then that's what you're doing.
You're programmed with everything that you need in it.
Yes.
It's programmed.
It's pre-programmed, and it's telling on a cellular level, it's providing your body on a mitochondrial level, it's providing you with all the massive power to grow and develop in ways that you can't get that power. So when people are saying that you are suffering from something that's a little bit more aggressive than normal, it could be anything, whether you suffer from migraines or diabetes or heart condition or anything that most people are suffering with these days, the microgreens actually would be the most complete self-regulating supplement that you could take that would help you with that, because as human beings, we just don't have enough information to know what you're actually deficient in. And so I always feel like putting somebody on a regimen where they're required to consume X amount of microgreens, that is more powerful, because it's giving your body things that you don't even know what you might need, but your body does, your cells know. And so when you give them that access to that power, then, imagine how much more health you can gain by investing in the microgreens.
Because it really is a lot more power in that, because it is programmed. It is a natural seed that is programmed. So your body's going to know exactly what to do. Like with supplements, I imagine it just going, where do we start with that, And nobody really thinks about being full on supplements. Like, I think it was kind of comical what you say, they expect, you have to explain to them that, yeah, you're not going to get full on microgreens. Well, you're not going to get full on
pills.
those pills, right? It's like changing your mind to why is it important to have this?
For sure.
Right. And so, you don't need very many to do that. But, I think that you and I need a separate show to talk about the benefits. But, I mean, I will say that you and your team have worked really hard to put together incredible blends that would be very complete to help support people's health, right?
Thanks to working with you. We didn't know that, when we walked into this, of course, I had an accounting degree and was not a farmer or a nutritionist. I will say that my mother was very supportive of raising her children eating fresh food. When McDonald's and TV dinners came out, she was like, "Oh no, no!" So I had that advantage, and I loved the taste of clean, healthy food. So I had that growing up. But partnering with Neethi, she helped me name or put some combinations together of things that were had the cardioprotective, the detoxifying, the most detoxifying greens. So that's how we came up with those.
Although all
mixes.
of them are
For sure.
alkalizing and detoxifying and nourishing, all of them are. But if someone is trying to focus specifically on one thing more than another because of something, I see a lot of, detox pills or, slim and sassy or
Slim and sassy.
teas and things like that. And I think it's hilarious. And I'm like, how do you know what 3 things are going to give you that power? And since I don't know, and I don't think any human being can know. I mean, I think it's quite arrogant for a human being to act like they know that that's what's going to fix it, which is obviously what puts us in this dilemma most of the time, is that someone does try to take those pills and then, maybe they have a small gain, but then they don't have a complete gain. But I think that we have watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people use this as a self-regulating, because human beings can't know it all, so that, nature has it all figured out and we just don't. But, if you're relying on these and leaning on the greens, then how can you go wrong, man?
Can't go wrong.
Yeah, you just...
People, I'm kind of wondering if out there's the question of what is a microgreen? And because a lot of times when I tell people about it, they immediately think it's sprouts.
Okay.
They immediately think sprouts. So it's
question.
kind of like alfalfa sprouts, or is it? No, it's not a sprout. What is it?
So recently now, because farmers were, I feel like the first person who named the microgreen was somebody who was out in the garden with their seeds and they spilled them and went, and then they started to come up and they were like, well, we got to eat all those because look how many we just spilled. That's what the definition of a microgreen from the USDA and the FDA right now is the first true leaves, right before the first true leaves of the plant. So vegetable and an herb starts off its life and a sprout comes out of the seed, and then these leaves forms, and they're called cotyledon. They're either monocots or they're dicots, and within about 10 days from that period, the true leaf starts forming the plant. So the plant that you would identify as like kale or broccoli starts to develop after the cotyledon form. So it's the cotyledon stage that is the microgreen stage.
So if you think of it like a newborn, if you will.
Exactly.
It's the newborn before the full-grown person
Teenagers.
or
Yeah.
plant, right?
Yes. Exactly right.
Are there particular kinds of seeds that are needed for microgreens?
So we have 60 varieties. I feel like any plant would be a micro. In fact, you can look on the ground right now while it's spring. You can watch the weeds be microgreens. I mean, it's just that's the stage. But there are typically in this industry about 60 varieties of seeds that people are growing for commercial microgreens.
How are they coming up with that? Like what?
So I think that it's just the taste. So we've noticed that those who went before us had identified a good number of radishes. That powerful flavor of broccoli, kale, collards. Those all are really flavorful as a microgreen, more flavorful even sometimes as the full-grown plant. So I think it's commercially they figured out it has a good taste at that stage, so they started to pursue those. We've been recently trying hemp as a microgreen because North Carolina has legalized hemp. And
Yay.
where I don't know of any other farmer anywhere. I'm trying to do some research, trying to work with North Carolina Department of Ag just to see if there's somebody else. I don't know of anybody else doing it. And what we found is that particular stage, right when that true leaf pops, it gets bitter, but right before, it's very nutty, it's very delicious, and they're supremely healthy for you.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
Yes.
Mhm.
So, okay, now we're going to get into some tough questions.
Mhm.
So, you know, again, I think microgreens are required at this moment more than supplements.
Mhm.
I am anti-supplement and for food because it's self-regulating. In that way, I also know that using microgreens, there's a level of unsustainability with that because you have to be able to get the seeds. And what a lot of folks aren't realizing with this plant-based movement is that you can't have seeds without livestock.
Mhm.
Again, I keep saying you can't have clean soil, you can't have balanced soil, you can't have self-regulating soil without livestock. You can't have plants without livestock. I think I can just say that over and over again. But you can't grow any of the plants to get to them to the moment of seeding. So if we consume everything as a microgreen and we don't allow it to get to the proper plant level and then take it from that plant level so that it produces the seed so that it reproduces, then at some moment, this is really unsustainable. So if we wanted Tami to be very successful in producing these natural supplements for us going forward on a large scale for generations to come, she would need to have a garden somewhere, space. She needs some land space with some livestock massaging it and, you know, like fertilizing it properly. And then those plants need to be able to grow to some full levels. And we're not telling everybody to stop eating vegetables because this isn't a reason to stop eating other vegetables. This is where you take vegetables and then you put more nutrition on them with the microgreens because we need extra supplementation because the food has been depleted of nutrition because the soils have been raped from the industrialization, centralization of the food system, and the browning of the earth that I want to bring everything back to all the time. So, people are saying that it's unsustainable, and at the same time trying to go vegan and push microgreens. What are your thoughts about all of what I'm saying here?
So initially, when I started the business, I was so pleased to find that there was research to prove how healthy they were, and I was coasting on that, just like doing the best thing. I'm feeling like I'm doing something good, and then I was at a conference with other farmers and farm specialists. There's a conference that North Carolina and South Carolina are absolutely lucky to have, Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, and there are experts from the universities, from the ag universities, and farmers from all over those two states, and lots of good farming information, ag, especially small farm. I'm sitting at lunch with one of the University of South Carolina's masters in plant biology, and I'm telling everybody, like I always do, I'm a little proud, look what I do, I grow microgreen. And he's like, I hate microgreen growers. And I was like, oh my. And it floored me. And so we ended up spending lunch together, and he explained to me exactly what Neethy's talking about, that we do use quite a bit of seed. The point of commercially growing microgreens is to densely seed an area. And densely seeding an area requires a lot of seeds. So he said, right now there's, and actually today, because I looked it up before I came in here, there used to be in the fall of 2017, 6 large corporations that owned 75% of the seed in the world. There are now 4, and pretty soon they're going to be 3 because 2 of them are on the verge of merging. And that is a frightening, because it's Monsanto and it's Bayer and it's Dow and DuPont and Syngenta. And we're not going to have
all the
access.
biotech
That's
companies.
Exactly right.
So,
all the GMO
and then
companies.
the people that are telling you that there's not going to be enough food for all the people in the world, which is a lie. It is true only because they want to take over the ownership of the seeds. Isn't that awesome?
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys understanding? And then you want to go and argue with everybody and say we need to go plant-based more. No, you don't. Actually, what you need to be doing is supporting livestock. so that we can have, more, we can grow and own more of our own seeds, because they're going to now take what you're using as the organic seeds.
If we don't have,
If we
stop
don't
them.
do something about it, eaters,
Mhm.
all of you consumers out there, if you don't start deciding that you want to, and we're not saying go to the store and buy organic, because that's going to be Dow and everybody owning it. Okay, let's be clear. We need to find farmers that are local, that are able to, that are regenerative, that are saving seeds, that are fighting for heirloom seeds. The fight, I mean, we're right now, what would you do? I mean, I don't know that Tami could stay in business if she couldn't buy seeds from somewhere.
That's right.
And so she's going to have to source these seeds from somewhere if you can't produce them yourself. What are you going to do? And do you know how to do it if you wanted to produce it yourself? If you wanted to eliminate the seed place, what kind of acreage do you need? What kind of livestock do you need? What do you need for that?
It's totally true. So being on small farms, and both of the little locations I've had are less than an acre, it's impossible. So, but I did learn that we throw our used media out into a compost system, and then we use that compost to
Explain to them the media that you're talking about.
Okay, so we grow on 100% organic cotton burlap, and when we and microgreens
versus soil.
We grow with RO water, organic burlap, and organic seed. Period. Those are our inputs. And when we cut the microgreens, then we are left with the burlap. And the burlap starts to disintegrate even when the plant is still in it. It's just starting to, because it's a natural cotton that once wet, it starts to disintegrate. So it composts fast. So we put it in our compost system, and then we use the compost for the garden. Then we started seeing all the plants that we were growing as microgreens in the garden. And it was really fabulous. And one of the ones that really got me interested in, can I save my own seed, is amaranth, that produces, one plant produces a plume that is about a pound of seed.
Wonderful.
So that one I could do.
Yes.
By myself. But you are so correct. I could not do enough seed for broccoli, kale, cabbage, collards, unless I had a 2,000 acre farm.
2,000 acre. Okay. And she couldn't make that work without livestock.
Right, and that takes you out of the urban area, right?
Yeah.
Right. Which is the reason why we all need to be supporting each other in a different way, which is why we're trying to create these networks of the regenerative farmers. It's not just for livestock. It's not just for one thing. It's for many things. And so protecting the seeds. That's what this is about. Protecting the seeds. You have to have the livestock for the soil, for the thousands of acres, so that she can even do this. And meanwhile, you have someone who's pushing a chemistry project agenda, which is going to sterilize the world. And then you're not going to have the power, and the people in charge are going to be able to control who has babies and who doesn't have babies. Isn't that basically what we're talking about?
It does feel like it's heading to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be really extreme with this, but it is extreme. And I want everyone to pay attention, because you don't have to look very far to see that this is happening.
There's no good reason for corporations to own all of our food sources. There's no good reason. And
right. If you don't want to talk to me about what you think is conspiracy theory piece of, depopulation, then this is all you need to know, is that we don't need 3 somebodies in charge of all of our food supply.
That's right.
If it sounds like some kind of crazy movie, like 007 conspiracy or something, it really does sound like that, but it is. It's nuts. But you think about it, owning seeds, like
Owning
really
life.
a company owning seeds where you can't even find some certain seeds for certain vegetables anymore. So you have to actually check in with a company to get seed. Like, isn't that from God? Like, when did that come from the company?
What are you talking about, Janae?
I know.
I mean, you can't even talk about God. Come on. There, we're not. We are not allowed to talk about any type of faith, because you can't. If you take God out of the system, then you can't have faith, which is the reason why all of these young people today can't have faith even in the life-giving force of nature. Nature has grace. Nature offers grace only if it's in balance. And it can only be in balance if you have the livestock, like the full ecosystem.
Right.
Which means that, you know, you don't need to eat all the animals. You're vegetarian, right? Or pescatarian or something. So, I mean, and you're pro wanting to do the vegetables, obviously. And so tell us, like, did you ever make a decision and say, I'm not going to eat meat and I'm going to villainize it and I'm going to only do this? Or did you just decide, my body seems to do better with this, and so, but I need somebody to eat that so that I can just have soil?
The first thing that made me decide to become a vegetarian was, or at that stage, that's what I decided, was I could not stand to see the way that animals were industrially processed. I knew what was going on with how they were treating cows and chickens, and everything was inhumanely treated. And I didn't want to support those industries until I started to know that there were local farmers really pushing back in their own way to stop that type of farming. I wasn't going to have anything to do with it, and that's why I stopped.
Why were you never driven?
We like to push people taking control and living intentionally. And it sounds like you have made that journey. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, so I felt like I didn't want my children to see me going to the grocery store and buying that meat that we had just watched how we actually got to see an industrial farm when the children were young on a field trip, of all things. I know. And it was... Before they put the snipers up? That's right. Yep. Whoa, this is awful. So I my mother used to love me as a child eater because no matter what she put in front of me, I'd eat it. I love food. I love everything. There's nothing I won't try. So it wasn't hard for me. So you grew
up on meat and everything?
On everything, everything, except processed food because she wouldn't have it.
Right.
So it was not hard for me to just take that piece out of my diet and eat all the other bazillion things that I love to eat. So that's what happened. And then there were some people who I knew were raising fish correctly, and so I would occasionally allow a piece of fish to come into the house, and so that's why I'm a pescatarian.
And why are you a farmer now?
So, that's a good question. When I graduated from college, I had an accounting degree, and I worked for an accounting firm for 5 years, and found that it was a little bit too conservative for my understanding of the world. I didn't want to be focused on he who makes the most money and dies with it kind of life. I wanted to do something a little bit more important, and I happened to meet these young guys who were starting an intellectual property law firm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they needed somebody to do their back office. And I thought intellectual property was fascinating. I loved the idea of the little guy making the little thing, the little widget, and coming to us with her. And that's how we started, and it was really fascinating. We have the chip clip guy. That was our law firm. And it was actually his wife's idea, and he brought it, of course. And so all of that was really fun. And then we became another corporation. We took on a corporate client, a huge telecommunications company in Sweden. And the dynamics of the firm changed. I stayed there for 23 years. I managed the back office, and I was unhappy at that stage. I had plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, big butt-itis from sitting in a chair for too long, and working for old white males. I mean, it was just, that's where I was. And I was like, what am I doing? And when we all die, what's this going to say about me? So my children were at a high school in Raleigh that was the first high school to ask the PTA if they would support a food bank. And I was like, we need a food bank at the high school? What in the world? And so I really went up and figured out what was going on up there, and I said I would volunteer. While I was volunteering, I met the Interfaith Food Shuttle folks who were having farms all over Wake County. They were doing food insecurity initiatives in many different directions, and they were inviting Will Allen to Raleigh. So they said, Tim, you need to go to this thing. So I was at the law firm, said on Wednesdays I'm out, I'm going to go work in the food bank. I met Will Allen that spring, and I went to the workshop, and he told me how to grow microgreens. I was like,
how to cook dirt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He told us how to raise a hoop. He told us how to do everything in urban farming with very little resources, and to grow vegetables densely, to grow produce densely. So,
wow.
here I am.
So, see, I love to stress the everyday person becoming a hero, right?
Oh.
So, you took a school trip that appalled you, and you turned it into a farming movement, basically,
Well.
and that's very impressive. And that's what we're trying to give people ideas to do for themselves and their community. Because not only did you do it for your family, you spread it out to the community. Because I eat the greens.
Yes.
They're wonderful.
Well, this is where we're saying that it's, this is an extraordinary problem that's going to require ordinary people to resolve. And there's just no, all of the folks within our community that are either producing the food like you are or that are consuming the food, they're all rock stars. You have to be a rock star to be awake and conscious about what's going on with the browning of the earth. And, a lot of folks will say to me, like, where do we begin? How do we start? How about get out of the grocery store? Just get out of it and cook. Get out and cook, and don't do it one time. Do it every day. Do it
Or
every day.
even if you don't, let's
Right.
say you don't want to cook, at
Right.
least seek out someone local like Tami who can give you, some greens where you can just go out and sit there and eat those, right? You didn't
can
have
eat
to
them
cook
raw.
them.
Yeah.
They say you can't get full off of them. I eat them as a salad. Everybody eats salad every day, and they feel satiated with a salad. I eat them as a salad, and whatever you do with salads, I do with the greens.
And
So,
garnish. They make
yeah.
a great garnish. You can
Yeah.
throw them on anything, and it makes it look so beautiful. It does
Yes.
everything for the
They're
plate.
gorgeous. Well, I'm saying that a tablespoon gives you a full serving's worth of nutrition. I didn't say just eat one tablespoon. I'm saying that one is equivalent to that, but I definitely make an entire salad of them. You know it. Everybody knows that all I take pictures of it all the time. And, but if my children only eat one bite, it's enough for me to feel fine about it.
Yeah,
They
we
don't.
take shots on the way out the door.
Yeah.
Just grab a bunch and
Yeah.
make sure
You
you're
know,
good.
it's quick, it's easy, and anybody can do it. But I was thinking about what you were saying about the making everybody, like a hero. That's what the show's about. The show is about everyone who we're bringing on as guests, is someone who can give us one more example of how to do this and how to incorporate it in our lifestyle. So, do you
And
think
how to grow it in the community.
Yeah.
Because what I would love people to know, you not only do it within the CSA that we're all a part of, but you do it elsewhere as well. Where else do you do it?
So we're in 5 farmers markets. We are in a local-only grocery store in downtown Raleigh, which is kind of a cool thing. We're in Harmony Farms, which is a little store, a health food store off of Creedmoor. And we're in the produce box, Bella Bean Organics. So we're here
And
and
you
there.
do also source restaurants.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We have about 60 restaurants that we provide microgreens to.
So when we're telling people to ask questions of their restaurants, of their wherever it is they go, ask questions. So if you ask questions of your restaurants and you ask them, do you have microgreens? Do you have local fish? Do you have local beef? These are questions that make a difference because
Sure,
they
for
allow
sure.
you to do what your mission is to do.
One of the things that I recently heard some science about that is just fascinating to me about the local aspect of food is there's some research that found that soil microbes are really relatives of gut microbes, and when they're local, they're they're working in a better environment collaboratively, and they will efficiently help you get the minerals and the vitamins that your body needs because they're training each other. When you add a New Zealand blah blah and a Japanese blah blah and a into your diet, then the microbes are going, wait a minute, who's that?
Right.
How'd you get here? And what am I supposed to do with you? I find that fascinating.
That's
And-
amazing.
I mean,
and it
and
does-
especially when everyone says that they have food allergies and they can't eat certain
Mhm,
vegetables.
Yep.
What are you
Yep.
talking about?
Yep.
You know, you can't eat fruits and vegetables.
I had a man today tell me he couldn't eat vegetables because they had too much iron in them, per his doctor.
Wow.
Per his doctor.
Mhm.
We are talking revealing irresponsible statements from physicians daily. What in the world?
I know.
You know, Americans don't need one more reason not to eat vegetables or fruits. Just not one more
Mhm,
reason.
mhm.
And every time I hear this garbage, it makes me very upset
Mhm.
because then that person also is never gaining their health and they can't figure out why. And then they're ready to spend, you know, an insane amount of money. And funnily, they end up on supplements.
It's crazy because you were just talking about
Yeah.
the gut. Part of the reason why there's all these allergies is because the gut is all wrong. People are consuming things that are so unnatural and quite toxic, very poison, a lot of GMOs, and you know, to have microgreens, it's a replenishment because there's nothing wrong with the iron in produce. Like sometimes we have to ask ourselves the question, what did I just hear and how is that possible, you know?
Because it's self-regulating. When you're eating nature, then it's self-regulating.
Yeah.
So what do you mean it's too much iron? Only human beings can make up that mistake. I mean, if you're taking iron like supplements.
Eating your pans, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, most people I know are iron deficient. So first thing, you know, I'm not saying it's not a true statement that the man was, you know,
Had some issue
had
with
it,
processing iron.
You know, men
there's something out of
actually
balance.
men have a lot of problem with iron actually because you know we lose blood, they don't,
Right.
and so donating blood for men is very important for them to reduce their iron levels. Not stopping eating vegetables.
Right.
Let me be very clear. Like, go donate some blood, but stop not eating vegetables.
Right.
If you have iron, you know that is actually the issue. You know, it's common. It happens. It's actually more common than you know.
But it speaks to
Men-
something being out of balance. Something is out of balance.
Well, they used
And they
to,
don't-
back in the Benjamin Franklin days, use leaching as a way of resolving this problem. I mean, it's a very real thing. And so they would use leaching and bleed people, I mean, as a way to treat them, which was what was required. And now you can go see a phlebotomist, make a donation, and save someone else's life and continue moving on. So,
Well, what I find fascinating is a doctor would say that to a person, and then the person will go and say that to their mother, their father, their brother, their friend. So then that's how all this villainization happens, basically. It's just misunderstandings.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is say, don't think of the villainizing things. Try thinking of bringing life to things. Try thinking of it as, you know, instead of telling your friend, I can't take iron, so don't eat whatever vegetable that was. Why don't you say, well, why don't you eat these microgreens? Because on a daily basis, they're going to balance you so you won't have an iron deficiency.
or excessive level.
Or an excessive
because
level,
maybe it'll help
whichever
you,
the case
maybe
may
it'll
be.
help your body eliminate that extra iron because
Right.
you're deficient in something else. Again, you know, the arrogance of man is never is just, you know, the absurdity.
But we can counter that. I truly believe we can counter that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this show.
Right.
I truly believe if you tell people enough the opposite and the bringing in life and feeding them life, that it will spread and it will turn things around so that things like that wouldn't happen anymore.
Because words are powerful, Valerie.
Right.
And our mind is so powerful. And the way that we're communicating with each other and the things that we're absorbing and taking in, the words we take in from other people, they're more powerful than even whatever it is that we're putting in our mouth. I tell folks all the time, I'm like, you know, you guys are stressing yourselves out about what you're eating because you're trying to gain this or eliminate that rather than just bringing the joy. Bring the joy to your palate. I mean, you know, like have a variety of foods and make sure you know where you got them from and then remove that anxiety. You know, hashtag get out of the grocery store.
And the words from certain people, like the doctor, you know, that
Yes.
person experienced that and that made a greater impact than anyone in that in their life. And so really the best question would be like what kind of fruits and vegetables are you eating? Are they
Mhm.
conventional or are they
Mhm.
organic? You know, I think that there should have been a discussion there rather than the just quit vegetables is not what you would expect from a healthcare provider, right?
Exactly
But
right.
that's
Yeah.
people in general.
Or even
They're
if
not
the,
taking the time to do that, you know.
Right.
even
because,
if the
you know.
consumer misunderstood the doctor.
Mhm.
Let's give
Mhm.
everybody the benefit of the
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
They misunderstood. Why would you not stop and think, okay, why would my doctor say that?
Mhm.
And ask the question, are you saying I should not
Mhm.
eat
Have
vegetables,
Well,
or something?
Are you allowed
know?
to ask questions, Valerie?
Well,
I mean, I think the problem
I didn't
is
know you could until this show, so
I
I'm
know.
very
I
glad
mean-
this show is here.
you know, come on. I think that you were the person who I met that was like super quiet and
I
afraid to ask questions because people yelled at you too much or something. You know, and we're trying to say like, you know, don't. And Tammy, you know, like when you're at a market or when you're somewhere out in public and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, can you help me figure out the microgreen thing?" Then are you gonna? I mean, does it make you angry?
No, it's so exciting when somebody even knows what a microgreen is. I love it. No, I totally love it.
What if they don't know what a microgreen is and you're at a market and they're gazing at you from across the way, which they do all the time? I mean, and they don't know what it is and they don't know why you're there. Is it okay for them to come closer?
Of course it is.
I mean, do you bite?
Of course it is. I try not to bite.
I've been at markets with Tammy and people literally will stare at us from 100 yards away. They're like, what does she have? I can't see it. It's like, so what is that? And then we're always like, come over. They're tiny.
Oh, they're
You know,
awesome.
and they're terrified to come because you know that's the other thing. I think it's interesting society today. You can't not know something. Why? I mean, why can't you just say, what in the world is that? I don't know what that is. And how do you do it? So, you know, are you going to be upset if they say, like, how can we eat that?
Never. And because I've also become more empowered in this fight or, you know, whatever it is that this movement to convince people.
We're
that-
trying not to fight with people.
That's
True.
right.
You know, even those who come up with the most insulting things like, oh, greens. They're so gross.
They're so green.
Oh, are they? I hate the taste of greens, or I'll never put a green in my mouth. I used to be like offended, like, what the hell's wrong with me? But now I understand and I feel the obligation to
Mhm.
here, try one. Let me give you one.
I get a, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, if you could just say, all right, so if you don't like them, and this is 40 times potentially, like, I don't know, I'm just gonna guess like radishes could be because they're so rich.
correct. You are correct.
The
You are
taste
correct.
is so rich. You know, when you just throw that out there at them, like, okay, so you don't have to eat a big bowl of
Vegetables.
whatever.
Yeah.
Just take a shot of these, you know, just
Yeah.
grab some in your hand, and
Mhm.
that might even change that conversation.
It does. It totally does. It totally does.
I
Happened
think it's
today.
hilarious when we're there with the kids and the people have already made the decision for their children.
Oh,
my
yeah,
children,
that
my
happens a
children
lot,
won't
too.
eat those because they're green, and I'm like, really? Because if you let my child introduce your child to them, then I think they might eat them.
Mhm.
And why are you making that decision for them? And why aren't you giving them the opportunity to experience things? And why aren't you encouraging them to come with you on this adventure on your plate? So we're, you know, create an adventure on your plate and microgreens. My goodness.
They're an adventure.
They're an adventure. And there's so many of them. And you don't have to eat a lot of them. And parents, you don't have to cook so many of
That's
them.
right.
You just take like this palette, this huge palette of them, and then you just do ding, 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 like make a plate with like 5 splotches on it and let them take a bite of every single one. And then they just got this round robin of a million vitamins and minerals. And then they can say, I don't know if I like that. And then you can say, we're not allowed to say we don't like it. You can say no thank you. And then tomorrow they can say, take some more no thank you bites. Because every day their palate is changing. I used to tell my kids, I'm like, you cannot use those bad words around me. So at our table, if you said something, you had to take more no thank you bites. So you can say no thank you, and you have to take at least, you know, however old you are, you have to take that many no thank you bites of something. And then you can decide if you actually don't really want it, and that's okay. Then you can say no thank you after your 5 bites or whatever. And then tomorrow you can try it again because you might like it tomorrow because
Right. Totally,
you know,
totally correct.
every day you like something different. And adults, you're the example. So I know I have a lot of bad habits that I never want my kids to have, and I wish that I didn't have them. And so I make sure that I encourage them to go on the adventure to avoid being that bad habit person so that they can have better habits. I mean, aren't we trying to make our children be better than us in every other way? Like, we always are trying to put them in sports and in activities and in things that we never had the opportunity to do, but we're not willing to allow them to have that adventure on their plate. And I'm really confused about
And
why.
even if the parent doesn't take that initiative, they really don't have to. There's people like Tami. You go to the schools. You go to.
If
I was
they'll
just,
let her
I was
in.
just going to say we're in a Smart Start daycare
Oh.
where the kids are asking for the greens. Like, the director thought it might be a good fit, and she doesn't want to move that order at all. She wants the kids. The kids are asking for the greens.
That's
They
fantastic.
want the greens.
I think
And you
every
also
school.
teach, correct? So you actually go and
I've taught at that daycare. I'm going to do it again. She just asked me if I would this summer. I try to partner with folks in downtown Raleigh and actually anywhere. We're going to do a workshop on the farm in Hillsborough, but I try to teach those classes where any.
If they're inviting
That's
you,
right.
you'll teach them.
That's exactly right.
and what do you teach? Exactly.
So we teach them how to do it themselves. So especially in a daycare environment, or a school environment, it's a science project in addition to a nutrition project, in addition to a lunch project. I mean, it's just like everything all in one. So I spoke to a group of homeschool kids from kindergarten to 12th grade, and I had all kinds of questions I had a 5-year-old tell me about cod-laden leaves, and I was like, okay, I want you to come and work with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to get folks to be able to feel empowered themselves. Like, one of the easiest things to grow is a sweet pea. So I teach how
You
to
don't
grow.
even have to try.
Mhm.
I mean,
That's
you can
right.
try to stop
That's right.
them
That's right.
if you want,
That's right.
but you can't. And there's, children are definitely going to eat something if they grow it themselves. So if you are a parent who hasn't been a fan of vegetables and you want to try to instill that in your children, then allowing them to try to grow microgreens and eat it themselves, it doesn't require any preparation. They can eat it straight out of the pot, ground, whatever. And then that way you're not, involved in the discouraging of that.
Right.
You're promoting it in the best way that you can. Because it's difficult being a parent these days, let me tell you.
And the easiest thing, and I'm always looking for the easiest route, the easiest thing to do is take a field trip to one of your workshops.
Yes.
Or
to the farm.
Or to the farm.
For sure.
And what I find these days especially is children will listen to others
Yes.
more than you, because that's what they're trained to do. In school, they're trained to listen to the teachers, in wherever they go, whether it's daycare, whether it's wherever. They're trained to listen to the person speaking in front of them. So take them to the places that they're going to tell them what you want them to hear.
Yes.
And then it'll make it a lot easier for you to tell them, and they'll absorb it quicker when you're constantly involving them in the activities
For sure.
that are reinforcing what you say.
Exactly. Well, Tami, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us to go over these things. We are going to do a part 2 with you. So, folks, I hope you guys will stay tuned in for next week's episode, where we're going to be talking with Tami about what type of responsibility is going into producing as an indoor farmer, and how to protect and produce your own seeds. So we're going to kind of dive in with her on these topics, and I think that you're going to really learn a lot from these next couple of episodes. And we wanted to thank you guys so much for being with us here today, and stay tuned in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey friends, we hope that this production has served you in some way today. If you would like to hear more shows like this, please help us grow our army of Minas by visiting our website and making a donation today. We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and I ask that you please like and share this video, follow us on Facebook, become involved with us on Instagram and Twitter, and all of our links can be found in the show notes. Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.